we'll run the full 45 minutes, and there's a lot of material to cover, and I want to make sure that we get through everything and leave some room for any questions that there might be from the audience. We will be taking questions towards the end of the webinar, simply because we want to make sure that we want to get through all the materials. If you're having difficulty hearing me, please let me know right now on chat so that I can raise my volume or speak more clear. Okay. So I believe Kathy is having a little difficulty hearing me. Is this better, Kathy? Yes, we will be sending out or making available the recording of this session. So it should be available to everybody. We'll also be placing this presentation out there on our website, which will allow you to access it so that you can pass it on to your teams. So if we have the communication issues out of the way, let's begin. So today's agenda is basically we walk through some of the customer pain points when it comes to testing and testing in the SAP application space. And we look at SAP test management strategy. So what is the approach that they have taken to resolving the issues that people have with testing in the SAP space? We'll then dive into the test management solution option number 2 and actually demo some of the tools. We'll talk through the testing process and talk about how do you maintain this testing solution in your environment. And finally go through some next steps and Q&A at the end. Okay? So starting off with the customer pain points. Typically, SAP noticed in when they spoke to their customers that business applications or for their customers didn't just consist of SAP. It was a heterogeneous environment. So you could have homegrown .NET applications or AS400 applications that interface with SAP. So that makes it very hard to test across the landscape, simply because you need to know every integration point. You need to understand, the multiple platforms and how to test on those multiple platforms. There are multiple teams involved in the development and the testing of these different applications, and that whole coordination and synchronization becomes an issue. Also, when you have multiple applications, you have multiple updates being received from multiple vendors. So the understanding of what that change is going to do to your application and what to test within your entire application landscape becomes a challenge. And then testing is expensive, right? You have to have resources that are only dedicated to testing. And then whenever change happens, you need to make sure that nothing gets broken, so you have to test the entire application today. And creation and maintenance of automated test scripts is expensive. So SAP's test management strategy could be easily broken down into the following 3 decisions. Firstly, they said to address the issue of not knowing where the integration points between your applications are, the decision was to create a central hub where you can store your business processes, and not only the business processes for SAP, but across your landscape. So if it interfaces from SAP into a .NET application, you can capture the business process and the process steps that happen within that .NET application also. You can define the scope of change events. So when you receive an enhancement pack or a support pack from SAP, you can analyze and figure out what is the impact to your business processes. And that way you're able to orchestrate end-to-end integration testing. So that was the first decision, create a central hub to record and manage your end-to-end business processes. The second was to basically provide you with functionality for manual and automated testing, performance testing, And the third one had to do with allowing for integration with partner suites, because SAP realized that you want to test not only SAP applications, but your homegrown applications. And there are partners out there such as HP and IBM and Workshop that provide you with test tools that are multi-platform. So they allowed for that integration with SAP. So how does all of this pan out? You have multiple types of change that is happening. You might be implementing a new SAP solution or a new solution, right? You could be, once you have your solution in place, you could be making an update to that solution by application of a support package or legal enhancement pack or an enhancement pack, some custom code being implemented, etc. So what SAP recommends is building what's known as a business blueprint. A business blueprint is nothing but a complete blueprint of all your business processes within your environment. Once you have that blueprint, you're able to answer the question of what is 100%. So during my time as a test manager, which was years ago, I always was encountered with the question of, what is the percentage coverage we have on testing right now? And so my answer would be, okay, we have 1,000 test scripts. But really, was that a good answer? Does it answer the question, what is the coverage on the business processes? To be able to answer that, you need to define what is 100%. Then you'll be able to say, yes, we have 100% coverage, and we have a 90% coverage. So building a business blueprint is the backbone, the key to defining what your test scope is. Then we need to provide change impact analysis. Once we know what are the business processes, if we are introducing change, be it as a support pack, enhancement pack, what are the processes that are going to be impacted? Thus, we know what is the scope that needs to be tested. And once we have that, then we can facilitate test planning, which is development of test scripts, sequencing, automated test scripts, etc. All of that can be done, and then we can actually execute those test scripts. Okay? So let's see how SAP's test management option 2 lines up with the strategy. We look at this slide here. So SAP's test management option 1 involves primarily just Solution Manager and test tools that are within Solution Manager. Option 2 and option 3 are integrated with third-party tools. Option 2 is with HP tools, and option 3 is with the IBM toolset, the IBM Rational toolset. Okay? So option 2 over here, as you can see, we have blueprint and change impact analysis being done in Solution Manager. Once we have the structure, which is the business process hierarchy, we can sync that across into Quality Center, which provides the requirements for testing. We can build test scripts, etc., in Quality Center and perform the testing in Quality Center. You can create automated test scripts using tools such as Quick Test Pro provided by HP, or SAP TAO, which is a component-based test automation tool, and put those test scripts into Quality Center, perform your testing, and then if there are defects, you can choose to either resolve them in Quality Center itself or sync them into Solution Manager and use the incident management module within Solution Manager to resolve them. Okay? So these are the tools that are involved in SAP's test management solution option 2. So moving on. So how does Solution Manager facilitate the management of your landscape? So it sits in the center. It talks to all of your different managed systems, so your ERP systems, your CRM systems. It communicates via RFC, and thus it's able to manage your landscape, manage transports, scheduling of jobs, all of that good stuff, technical monitoring, alerting, all of that can be done via the RFC. But to manage your application, Solution Manager needs to know what your business processes are. So it's important that you define your business processes within Solution Manager for you to be able to manage those business processes. Now, business process, the repository is built up in a 3-tier hierarchical structure. Business scenario, under which you have multiple business processes, and then under the business processes, you'll have the process steps. Against that structure, you are able to store documents such as requirements, functional specs, technical specs, etc. You're able to store transactions, programs, configuration elements, and development objects, test cases, training documents. All of that can be stored against that structure. So I know there will be a lot of questions, so let's just dive right into a demo of a business process repository. Let me just check real quick if there are any questions here. Okay, so let's dive right into the demo of a business process repository. I'm going to be sharing my desktop here. So what we have here is our Solution Manager system. And I'll execute a transaction Solar01, which will take me into a project defined within Solution Manager. And this is what we call a demo killer when the system behaves slow. I apologize for that, guys. Okay, so this is typically how you would lay out a business process repository. It starts off with the first level of business scenario. Then you have multiple business processes under them, for instance, the order-to-cash demo process and financial processes. Under the process, you have process steps, such as quotation, sales orders, outbound deliveries. These are the process steps. Now, you can build this kind of structure out in even SharePoint, right? So what's special about it in Solution Manager? Well, in Solution Manager, you can do things such as you're able to define documents. So if I were to say, for the quotation process, I want to define I can define functional specifications documents. I can define requirements documents. And it's very easy. It's just a matter of me saying add. And I can choose any of these predefined, or you can define custom templates. And I can just load a document in here. I don't want to do it right now because the system seems to be very slow. You're also able to manage the documentation by statuses. And so you can basically say that, if you have a team of consultants and they're working in your system, they can take the documents only to a particular status, and then your main people in-house can take it on further for any approval steps, etc., that you want to achieve on that documentation. Against the structure, you're also able to store transactions. Hello. Anyway, the system is misbehaving, so I am, okay. So as you can see here, I have transaction defined for the quotation process step. I have transaction BA21 defined. I can actually highlight that transaction and execute from here, and via RFCs, it'll actually launch a session in my development ERP system because I have defined the system role up here as development. If I change the system role to quality assurance, it will launch a session in my quality assurance system. Okay? So similarly, there are other things that you can do. You can define development objects, the training documents, etc., can all be stored against such structure. So now when you have a consultant come in and say, okay, what are the business processes that you are running, you can actually point them to Solution Manager, show them all the business processes, how they're laid out, and what are the transactions that are used, what are the development objects, all your documentation are also stored against the structure. This BPR should be your living, breathing repository of your business processes as it is today in production. Okay, so I'm going to jump back to the presentation here. And give it a second here. Okay. So we just talked about your business blueprint. So how can you go about building this business blueprint within your organization? So SAP has provided you with multiple options. You can either build it manually within the Solution Manager tool itself, or you can use the first bullet point, which is a file upload. So you actually build out the structure in Excel, and you can upload it into Solution Manager. SAP has also given you another tool called Solution Document Assistant, which you can use to perform what's known as the reverse business process documentation. This option would apply to any customers that are already live on SAP and want to do a reverse business process documentation to figure out what business processes they have active in their system. You could use any business process modeling tools such as ARIS and then transfer that structure into Solution Manager. So those are your options for building a business blueprint. Some of the recommendations, tips, and tricks that we have learned over time implementing and building BPRs for customers would be, make sure when you're building out your business process structure that you don't build it modular, like only FI processes and SD processes and MM processes separate, but actually build it out as an end-to-end process, which is order to cash, procure to pay. The advantages that you will see in that is that you're able to then build your test scripts accordingly, so end-to-end for an order to cash scenario, for procure to pay scenario. When you're defining logical components within Solution Manager, you are able to define logical components for third-party applications or non-SAP applications, as we call it. So if, for instance, your process involves going from SAP into .NET product and then back into SAP, you can create a logical component for that .NET product and thus define the steps involved in that particular application. Even if there is a manual step or a policy step, as we call it. So, for instance, it gets emailed to a manager. Once it's approved, then further processing happens. Capture that manual step because you can, in the future, see if there is some way to electronically influence that step to happen a lot quicker so that nothing falls through the cracks. Okay? And when you're building out the structure, make sure that you have a good numbering scheme. The numbering scheme helps you with identification of where a document has to be stored and where it comes from and where it needs to go. Okay. Additional tips and tricks are master data and organizational units. You have transactions for them and you have process steps for them. Don't capture them in the master data and organizational folders that are available within Solution Manager. Put them in the business scenario, business process folders, simply because those transactions get captured and you're able to run change analysis on them. Okay? Things such as RICEPs and RICEP Ws create a separate folder for the development team. you're able to then create a copy of those particular RICEPs into your business process structure. So you're leaving an area for your development team, your ABAP team, to go and make modifications, and those modifications automatically reflect in the upper structure. Similarly, there are other things that you can do, such as capturing keywords and then criticality, which help you in determining what is the impact of change. Okay. So we come back to this diagram again. We spoke about Solution Manager and it being your business process repository. You being able to store your requirements documents within Solution Manager. Next, we want to talk about the business process change analyzer, or the change impact analyzer. So how does the BPCA tool work? So you have changes happening, quite frequently in your system. You have support packages, you have, custom developments, etc. that are happening in your system. The BPCA tool, SAP quote unquote says, precisely determines your impact and helps you significantly reduce your test code. So how does it perform those functions? It compares the objects that are included in your transport. So anybody that's in an SAP world knows that when you make a change in an SAP system, that change you're making to is changes to the SAP objects or custom objects within the system. And when you make a change, the system is, if it's set to capture those changes, will capture and put it into a transport. Okay? So you have objects that you have modified in a transport. When SAP gives you a support pack or gives you an enhancement pack, it's nothing but changes that they have made, which are captured in a transport. So they are just giving you a transport. Okay? We have what's known as TBOMS that you can create, a technical bill of material. And that technical bill of material is nothing but objects that go to make a transaction or an executable program. Okay? So let me explain this better with a little visual. So you have your transport, which is a collection of all the objects that you have modified. And you have a TBOM, which is a collection of all the objects that go to make a transaction in the program. If you're able to find this intersection here, this intersection between the TBOM and the transport, you know what objects are common between the transport and the TBOM. Okay? So looking at the diagram on the right side, you have your business process structure here. So it starts off with the business scenario, which is sales. You have the business process, which is order to cash. And you have process steps from quotation all the way to billing. Against that process steps, you have the defined transactions. So quotation is VA21, sales order is VA01. And then here comes the transport. And you find that you have common objects that have been modified in the transport, which is common with transactions VA01 and VL01N for delivery. So you know transactions VA01 and VL01 are going to be impacted. Thus, you know the sales order process step and the delivery process step have been impacted. So you know what needs to be unit tested. And you know what needs to be regression tested. So you know, since there's an impact to your order to cash process, you have to regression test that entire process. Make sense? Good. So I know we have, let's jump into a demo real quick so I can show you how the BPCA tool works. I'm just very afraid right now that it's going to slow down the process. If it does, you have to skip that demo portion of it. So here is my business process structure, and I have this particular transaction, VA21, for quotations. If I were to highlight the transaction and click on the attributes button, and go over to TBOMS, the tab called TBOMS. Okay, you'll see that we have created a static TBOM for this particular transaction. And I'm just going to click on Display Content. Okay, so this is showing you the objects that go to create a TBOM. Okay, so it will consist of program codes and program objects and code objects, etc. Now let's switch over to the BPCA tool. So I'm just going to go into the Test Management Work Center. So SAP has very neatly categorized all of the tools that it provides to you in Solution Manager into different categories. So whatever belongs to test management will be available in the work center called Test Management. So going into the Test Management Work Center, and it should come up here in a few. And BP Change Analyzer, that's the Business Process Change Analyzer. Okay. So since we don't have the time to actually run an analysis, I pre-ran an analysis over here against the project that we had earlier. So down here is the results. Let me just talk real quick about how you run the analysis. So you can run the analysis for any of these change objects. So if you receive a support package, or if you receive an enhancement package, or if you're just turning on a business function within an enhancement package, a transport request, it could be customizing, it could be workbench. You can run the analysis for any of these changes that happen in your system. Down here, you will define where your transport was created. So once you pull in the transport, for instance, this would be your dev system and the client where the transport resides. You would choose where to put which transport you want to run the analysis against. And then down here, you would choose which project you want to run the analysis against. The project is where you have defined your business processes and your transactions and your executable objects and create a TBOMS for them. Okay? So when you run the analysis, it'll literally give you this kind of an output which tells you, this transaction VA21 has been impacted. Okay? And it'll even tell you whether there's a test case available within the system for that transaction VA21 or not. If you want to see why it said that transaction was impacted, you can click on intersections. And it tells you that it found one object in common. So between your transport and the transaction, it found that you had a program code that was common. So a program was being used. The program is SAP MB45A. So it was an SAP program that was being modified by the transport, and hence it triggered that transaction as being impacted. Okay, so you can see how at a very detailed level, going right down to the objects, the BPCA tool is able to trigger and tell you that you have a particular transaction that's impacted, and that transaction is within this process step, and thus you're able to tell which process is being impacted. Okay? So we have a couple of questions here while we went over. So the first question is regarding the reverse business process. Is there a ballpark percentage an organization should expect to capture versus how much would still need to be manually documented? It'll be hard for me to basically say what percentage. It depends on how many systems you have. So for instance, the reverse business process documentation does very well with ABAP-related objects. So if you have transactions being used in the system, like an ERP system, it does a good job of capturing every transaction or executable program that you execute within your production environment. But if you have, say, for instance, an FPM system where you have work processes versus transactions, it's not so good in determining the work processes. It goes purely by ABAP transactions. So the percentage of how much can be captured just using reverse business process documentation would be dependent on what kind of systems you're running the analysis against. Okay. The other question we have is, how long will it have taken to run the analysis? Typically, we can have SPA and reverse business process documentation done between 2 to 4 weeks, depending on access issues and any technical issues that might arise. But if everything is kosher, it takes between 2 to 4 weeks. So we have a question from Jeff. I've seen in various SAP documentation the BP are already full of processes as it's seen in the demo. Is there a recommended method for importing business processes which have been defined manually? The best way to do it manually would be to actually manually enter it into the system. The upload tool for filling out the business blueprint is, it doesn't do a very good job with an append. If you're filling it out for the very first time, then yes, we would recommend using the Excel tool to upload the blueprint. But if you're trying to do an append, we much rather recommend that you use a manual process to it. Okay, so proceeding further with the presentation. So as you can see here, the BPCA tool is completely, the backbone of the BPCA tool is the business process structure, defining your scenario process steps, and against your process steps, defining the transactions. And for the transactions, creating what's known as TBOMS, or a collection of the objects that go to make those transactions. But there are different types of TBOMs that you can create. So the first type is up here, what we call the static TBOM. So a static TBOM is created programmatically. You execute a job, and it does a where used analysis on every transaction defined in your project and pulls the objects in. You can just create static TBOMs for all of your transactions and run a BPCA analysis, not a problem. The issue is, the disadvantage is that while it's fast and dirty, your results are not going to be very precise, because the way SAP defines VA01 and what you might have done as configuration to modify VA01 might be different. So there might be objects that you're not capturing in a static TBOM because you have made changes to VA01, how it looks, what it does, etc., etc. So the answer to creating more precise analysis is basically doing what's known as dynamic TBOM. So dynamic TBOMs is a user actually executing the transaction like it is done in your company, and a trace is running in the background which goes and looks at every object that gets touched while the user is executing that transaction. Okay? So that becomes more precise. But if you have, 1,000 or maybe 2,000 transactions that are currently being used in your system, it's rather painful to define or have, dynamic TBOMs created for each and every transaction. So usually we recommend to the customers that they just figure out the critical transactions based on the critical processes for their business and create dynamic TBOMs only for those critical transactions. So when the analysis is done that when it comes to those particular transactions and processes, the analysis is precise. And the rest of the business processes that are, medium criticality, low criticality, you can just keep them as semi-dynamic TBOMs for those transactions. So when you do find the impact to them, you can then choose and say, let's look at how many objects within it are actually impacted. If it shows that 10 objects or 15 objects within the entire TBOM has been impacted, yes, you want to test it. But if it's just one object, you might say, I think I can live with the risk. Okay. Now with Service Pack 10, SAP has introduced the concept of a semi-dynamic TBOM. This uses the UPL data or the usage procedural logging data that's available in your system's kernel, and it creates what's known as a semi-dynamic TBOM, which is a little more precise than a static TBOM. Okay. Just looking at the time here, we are running short on time, so I'm going to speed up on the webinar. So the next piece is we have Solution Manager. We have defined how to create a blueprint. We have shown how to run the Business Process Analyzer tool, which will define your impact. Now the next piece is transferring that scope, testing scope as requirements into Quality Center. That happens via a tool called the HPQC Adapter, which is sold to you by SAP. And that will have to be installed for you to be able to transfer those testing requirements into Quality Center. Okay? Once you transfer those requirements into Quality Center, you can then build test cases or test scripts. They can be manual test scripts or automated test scripts to fulfill those test requirements. And then you can perform the execution of those test scripts and proceed ahead with testing. The other test tools that are available are Quick Test Pro for automated testing, SAP TAO for automated testing, and you can also do Excel uploads of test scripts into Quality Center. So just looking at a couple of questions here. If you use a transaction, so Nimesh Chauhan, if you use a transaction that we do not customize, use SAP standard, no transport, will BPCA pick it up? If the change is delivered by SAP, yes. Next is, so basically, Nimesh, you're going down to the object level. So you have a transaction that has been delivered by SAP. You have a number of objects that go to make that transaction. That's the information that's stored in your system. When SAP provides you with transport that has made modifications to those standard objects, when you run it, it will tell you that, hey, there is a change in this object, and that's the impact right there. Will HP Sprinter capture TBOM information? Yes, because HP Sprinter is basically just the UI from HP for you to execute your manual execution. The recording is happening in Solution Manager, and the trace is running via RFC onto your ERP system or your SCM system or whatever system it is. So yes, if you execute your test script with HP Sprinter, it will capture the TBOM information. Okay? So moving on further, let's talk a little more about the adapter. So the adapter is a web service between Solution Manager and HP Quality Center, and it's a bidirectional adapter that allows you to sync across your business blueprint structure, any documents that you might have stored in your structure, any test objects. Test object could be a transaction, could be an executable program, could be a config object. All of that can be synced as test requirements into the requirements module of Quality Center. And the bidirectional aspect of it is once you can perform testing in Quality Center, if you want to send across your results into Solution Manager, or if you want to send across defects into Solution Manager, you can use the adapter to perform that bidirectional sync. Okay? So let's move over to a demo of Solution Manager and the Quality Center adapter. So here we are back at Solution Manager, and I also have my Quality Center system here. So I'm going to log into Quality Center. And get into one of the projects that I have out there. And in Solution Manager, while we wait for me to log in Quality Center, I'm going to go into my project. And here comes Quality Center back again. So we have the requirements module in Quality Center. And as you can see right now, there aren't any test requirements defined. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this right now. So here we have our business process repository. We have processes defined, process steps defined. We have transactions defined for these process steps. When you install the adapter, you will notice that an additional tab shows up over here, transfer to SAP QC. Okay. This tab basically is where you will define what needs to be synced across as test requirements into Quality Center. So if I were to click on, say, sales order, I can, or let me click on transfer order, for instance. I can add an object that I want to sync across. So I can send across a business requirements document as the test requirements, or I can send across a test object. Okay? So going back to the first one here, when in project documentation, I have defined two documents, the functional specification and the requirements document. And I want to sync that across to HPQC. So remaining on that same folder, I'll click onto the transfer to HPQC. You'll see that the requirements document is already there, but I want to add the function specification. So I'm going to say I want to assign this an additional document to be synced across into Quality Center. And right here, Quality Center right now is completely blank. So it shows me the only document that's not available on the tab, so I'm going to add this functional specification document. Now I know there's also a transaction over there, so I can say I want to also assign the transaction, VA21, to be synced across into Quality Center. Once that is done, and similarly I have defined the test objects to be synced across for each and every process. Step over here. I just do a simple blueprint, send the data over to Quality Center. It will give me a pop-up over here, which will ask me what is it that I want to send across. Now, if I was doing a fresh implementation, I might have wanted even the solvent processes, for instance. But since, assuming I did just the BPCA analysis and it told me that the order-to-cash process needs to be tested, I'm just going to send the order-to-cash process over. So I'm going to say sync that across. And it gives me a confirmation down here that the data was transferred. So I can come over back to Quality Center, and when I refresh this view, it shows me the process structure. So the business processes, the order-to-cash process, and then the transactions. All the requirements get synced across. Now, what's interesting is that it shows you that these are test requirements and they are not covered. Another view that I like to view is I just go into View and go to Coverage Analysis, and it currently shows me that nothing is covered. None of the test requirements are covered. So this is how you can define scope within Quality Center. So now we have to go about defining test scripts that are going to cover these test requirements. Okay? So switching back to the presentation, we have SAP Quality Center. So you have the requirements module, which basically stores the business processes that have to be tested and the testing requirements. And you're able to provide features such as the requirements traceability and coverage matrix. So remember when I showed you the view change, the coverage matrix, and you could say which testing requirement was fulfilled and which one was not. You have the test plan module. So think of it as the repository where you're going to build your test scripts. That's the test plan module. And then you have the test lab, which is where you will pull in the scripts that you want to execute, sequence them, assign them to a tester, and execute them. And then the defect management module, which is where you will manage the defect to resolution. Okay, we have a few questions. Does BPCA capture changes in all SAP environments? And as I said, it's mostly for your ABAP system. So ECC, yes. BI, only the ABAP transactions that you use in BI. Portal, no. David Armstrong, are affected TBOMS reflected in HPQC or just in SOLMAN? So TBOMS that are impacted, the BPCA analysis will show you which business processes are captured. Till I believe it was Service Pack 8, that's where the analysis died. There was nothing further that you could do in terms of building a test plan for execution. But with Service Pack 10 onwards, now you're able to take the BPCA results and build a test plan in Solution Manager. And with the enhancement of the adapter between Quality Center and Solution Manager, you're also able to build the test plan within Quality Center itself also. Yogesh has a question: can you map a Solman project? Can you map multiple Solman projects to a single QC project? The mapping is one-to-one. So you would go into the Solar Project admin transaction, and you would actually say which one you want to which quality center project you want to connect your Solomon project to. Now, if you want to do it multiple, you'll have to change that setting every time you want to change it, change which project you want to connect to. Okay. So that's the quality center tool and the different modules within it. Now we have the Quick Test Professional tool. This is a test automation tool. It's a Generation 2 test automation tool, which integrates seamlessly with HP Quality Center, obviously because it's an HP product. And the reason I say it's a second generation test automation tool is because it's still based on the record and playback scripting approach. The good part about QTP is that it's been around for donkey's years, so it's been around for a lot of years, and it supports test automation for SAP and non-SAP applications. And thus the integration with Solution Manager is awesome, simply because now you're able to test your entire end-to-end business processes. The other test automation tool that SAP makes available is SAP TAO, or Test Acceleration and Optimization. This is a Generation 3 test automation tool. The paradigm shift over here is getting away from record and playback, but getting to doing a recording, but creating what's known as components. And individual components are stringed together to form end-to-end test script. Okay. SAP TAO is used mainly for SAP test scripts, and it supports multiple platforms within SAP, such as the GUI, CRM Web UI, ABAP WebDAM Pro, Java WebDAM Pro, Portal, and GUI for HTML. Okay. So as I said, how does TAO work? It creates components from the screens of the transaction. So similar to QTP, you have the recording going on, and you're executing the transaction. It records each and every screen, and either uses a standard component provided to you by SAP, or creates a custom component for the transaction that you have in your system. Okay, and these tests, so these components can be strung together and form a test script. The big seller is that since the test script consists of multiple components, and the components are shared, if, say, for instance, you make it a modification or a customization to your VA01 transaction, and the screen has been modified now, so that means the component that was previously created using SAP TAO is broken, but you just fix that one component, and it fixes multiple scripts for you. So the big seller with using TAO is the quick repair portion of it. Okay. We wanted to demo the tools over here, show you, quality center, creation of test automation, etc. But I think we're running out of time over here, so we'll just proceed with the presentation. So the idea is that we create your business process blueprint, or which documents your business processes. You either send the entire blueprint with the test requirements across into Quality Center, or you use the BPCA tool to select what it is you want to send across into Quality Center as requirements. You create test scripts within Quality Center and assign them to those test requirements. Those test scripts, you can then move them into the test lab environment and assign them to a tester. The tester receives an email notification. You can have email notification triggers from Quality Center. The tester opens their test script, executes the test script. If there's an issue, creates a defect. That defect can flow into Solution Manager and be directed to a configurator or developer. If the test script was successful, they mark it successful in Quality Center and can sync that back to Solution Manager, and thus the results are available in Solution Manager. You can run reporting from Solution Manager if you so choose to, not use the reporting within Quality Center. Finally, we wanted to talk about the solution maintenance. So there was a question about whether you can copy or point Solution Manager to multiple QC projects or vice versa. Well, the way we typically recommend to our customers they go about maintaining their solution is like so. So you start off with an initial implementation project within Solution Manager. Once you have all your business processes defined correctly within Solution Manager, you then copy that over into what's known as a solution. That solution becomes your golden copy, golden repository of your business processes. From there, if you have regular maintenance release where you're going to make changes, to your business processes, you can copy from a solution into a maintenance project, make the structural changes, document changes in there. If you're doing a new implementation, so today your sales and distribution doesn't include CRM, but tomorrow you want to introduce a CRM tool, you can copy your current business processes into a new implementation project and make those changes in here. Okay? Quality Center, you can have one project which is a repository of all of your test scripts, and you can copy that Quality Center project to correspond with your implementation project or correspond with your maintenance project. Once you understand what your test requirements are over here, you sync them into this Quality Center project and do a one-to-one match. Similarly, for your new implementation, you do a one-to-one match. Now, you will create new test scripts for your maintenance. You will create new test scripts for your project. You are making modifications to documents and structure in maintenance as well as in your implementation. So the reverse flow is SAP provides you with a tool known as the Compare and Adjust tool, which you can use to basically copy back any changes made in your maintenance project and your new implementation back to your solution. So once these go live, your release goes live or your new implementation goes live, your solution still represents your golden copy of business processes in your system. Similarly, with the Quality Center project, you're able to copy the delta over into your golden Quality Center project. Okay, let's take a couple of questions that are available over here. Okay, so Yogesh asked the question, you can pass on multiple blueprints into the HPQC project. You would do them one at a time. You would not do them simultaneously. Okay? So moving on, what are the next steps? So I know we didn't get an opportunity to demo any of the capabilities of Quality Center and the QTP test automation tool as well as the SAP test automation tool. We'd like to do that for anybody that's interested in watching those demos. So we'd be open to offering, if you feel that your team can benefit from it, please feel free to send us an email requesting, hey, we'd like a session with you to demo these tools for us. If you have any questions, just need answers to any queries that you might have right now. You already have the solution implemented. Please feel free to send me an email, and I'll do my best to get back to you in a week or so. The next webinar that we will be scheduling is on SAP's Test Management Option 1. The big seller over there is that all the tools available in it are available free. So, if you are interested, send us an email, let us know that you are interested. Based on how many people reply, we decide on how urgently we want to get into it. So this is my contact info, steve.christian@bnimble.com. My cell phone number over there. Please don't just call me at 2 o'clock in the morning. You can check out my profile on LinkedIn. And we are available to assist you however you need assistance.